So I'm going to talk to you about tsunamis today and how I see tsunamis. So I'm in geoscience department. You probably expect that I'm going to go with a shovel or some sort of hammer into the field, but I'm going to break that stereotype today for you. So when you think about tsunamis, you usually see something like this. This is a picture from the 2004 tsunami, and you see complete destruction of a community. The only thing standing is this mosque, and there are many people have many opinions about that. I want to talk to you about those destructions, but I want to take you back a little more into why I'm so passionate about this. So, and this goes back to the time actually to 2004, so way back when. And at that time I was a PhD student, and I was writing my PhD thesis on the simulation of meteorite impacts and how those meteorite impacts generate tsunamis. You see here an impression of a tsunami with dinosaurs, because that's the time frame we are looking at, 65 million years ago. It was a big impact, an 11-kilometer impact that hit the Earth in the Yucatan Peninsula 65 million years ago that sort of started the extinction of dinosaurs. And it was obviously, that was a big event. Half the Earth burned, not very pleasant to be around at that time. But essentially, this was the time, sort of depiction of the time. A big tsunami was generated. And what I did is I tried to simulate how the waves move around the Earth and how it's related to the oceans. And I did a lot of work. I was really proud of myself because there were these movies at that time also. There were big waves, hundreds of meters of waves. There's even a cave up in the Appalachian Mountains where we sort of assume there might be a tsunami deposit in there, and it's like 300 meters up, 900 feet, and we think it's an impact tsunami. But with my research, and I was so proud of myself, that this is complete bogus. So I spent a lot of time proving myself that this is not right. So it was really interesting. And also, so that was a really exceptionally difficult time because we didn't have the computational power at the time to do this kind of work. So it was really fantastic to prove myself that I don't need this big power. And then the 2004 tsunami happened. So I submitted my PhD thesis on the 20th of December of 2004, and I was finally ready to take a break. So I thought, so I was in home. I come from Germany, so we have a nice Christmas break. And one morning, my mom woke me up. I kind of slept in. My mom woke me up and said, "Robert, there's someone from the government talking to you. I want to talk to you. I don't know what you did, but you better respond to that." And she also said, "I think there's also a tsunami in the Indian Ocean." And didn't you do a PhD thesis about these things? I say, "Yeah, I did." And then, you know, that was the last time I had sort of fun at this time. A few weeks later, I found myself on the way to Indonesia and Thailand, and this is the picture that we saw. And that completely changed my life in a sense because I was making these really fantastic animations. Remember, meteorite impact, huge waves, hundreds of meters of waves traveling through the oceans for days. So what I did is I took the planet and I made it full of water, and it rotates around the sun, and it rotates around itself for days. And I simulated these waves for days because it was so cool to see how day and night occurred, and how many days a tsunami would travel across the oceans before it died down. And then I saw this, and this is the last time I made animations. I never made animations afterwards at all. I always had simple graphics because the problem is that this is not about physical infrastructure and houses destroyed. This is also about the human condition that you find. You see here in the lower left, fires, roadblocks, houses destroyed. You find unimaginable tragedy. You can look at people, and I hope you can see the hopelessness in this person's eye. But he survived. And you know why he survived? Because there was a tsunami in 1960 in Chile, and he's an older gentleman. And he remembered vividly from that time what he had to do to survive this. A few hundred meters away from this, 300 children died in this event because they did not know what to do. They did not know how to read the natural signs of a tsunami. When you are, and I can tell you that now, if you ever be in a coastal area and you feel shaking and you know you're close to the coast, you better get uphill quickly because you don't have a lot of time and you cannot wait for officials to tell you what to do. You need to self-evacuate. This person was able to do that. Others were not. And it's really, really tragic when people die in that. You can also see in the background we have a rod, so we measure things. So we try to understand through the measurement of how far inland and how high the tsunami went to see what we can do to prevent this tragic loss of life. And it's not just that, it's not just tragic loss of life, it's also infrastructure that is damaged. We want to make sure that police stations, fire stations, hospitals, emergency rooms are not in the flooding zone of a tsunami because we need those. All these three things later when we actually need to respond to this event. So to know where it is, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you see it, tsunamis don't occur frequently enough to just look at events that have occurred. I mean, how many tsunami events do you remember? Yeah, 2004, right? Did you know there was one in 2009, 2010, that cost thousands of people's lives? 2011 was Japan, I assume. How many of you remember the 2011 tsunami, by the way? Wow. So 25,000 people died, right? Tragic in itself. But 2004, remember, 200 or 300,000 people died. So even though 25,000 people died in Japan, it's a huge success story. And we need to make sure that every country is prepared like that so that we can prevent the loss of 300 of thousands of lives. So we want to make sure that critical infrastructure is out of harm's way. People can be moved quickly out of harm's way, so we need to measure things. Again, not enough tsunamis occurred, luckily, so we can just use the measured record, but we want to create a situation where we can take a proxy of the same measurements that we can take. So we need to, what we call, interrogate the geological record. So this is the impact of a tsunami. This is how waves arrive, and they translate into this, dirt. So we need to figure out how to take this information and translate it into numbers similar to when we go to the field and take a rod and measure. And that's exactly what I do with my group. So in my group, we don't take shovels, even though we're in the geoscience department. We take different deposits, sand, really teeny tiny sand grains, or these really big boulders. They are car size. They are a tenth of this room size. They are many, many tons heavy. Can be moved in a tsunami. We take those, we measure those. Again, we don't take a hammer on them. We don't move them, but we take computers. And what we do is we develop numerical methods that help to use the deposits, either these big boulders or the tiny sand grains, to invert the flow conditions, to estimate the flow conditions that were present at the time those were moved. And with that information, we can prepare better. We can, what it's called hazard assessment. We can see how bad it could be in the future. And with that, we can make sure that critical infrastructure is not in the inundation zone, and people can be moved out of the inundation zone quickly. Thank you very much.